Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel. As preppers, you all know that there's a lot of different things that we're supposed to be stockpiling so that we can be ready for different kinds of disasters and emergencies. The most obvious ones, of course, are the big three: beans, band-aids, and bullets. Those get a whole lot of attention, as well they should, and then also water storage and things like that. But there are some things that really don't get nearly as much attention as they should. The first thing that a lot of people forget to stock up on are different kinds of pesticides. Insects and other pests can really cause a lot of problems. First of all, they can spread disease. Some things like mosquitoes and ticks, they can bite you and cause different kinds of illnesses, whereas things like roaches can contaminate your food and spread illnesses that way. Other kinds have dangerous bites that could actually cause severe injuries or even worse. Like around here, we have things like black widows. We also have brown recluses. Scorpions are a problem in other places. And then also pests can cause severe damage to your property. Things like termites and carpenter ants, of course, they can damage the structure of your home. Being able to protect yourself and your property against all of these threats, it's really going to require more than just going out and buying a few cans of Raid. The first thing that you want to do is pick up stuff that will protect your home and other structures from those pests even getting inside. I've used Ortho Home Defense, and it seems to have done a pretty good job. The only thing is don't get the one with the little sprayer on it. Just get yourself a garden sprayer, and the refills of those, they'll be cheaper and it'll actually work. The thing to keep in mind about those homeowner grade pesticides is that they're not going to be as effective as what the guy from Orkin might be using. So you may need to get different kinds. Like you may need to get one kind for just general household pests, and you may need to get a different kind for specifically dealing with termites. The next pesticides that you need to consider picking up are those that are designed to protect you. Probably the first one that comes to mind is going to be Off. It's just something that you spray on you, spray on your clothing to keep those biting bugs away from you. Then also Sawyer, they make a permethrin spray that can be used to treat your clothing, and it does last a little while. Of course, do your own research, make your own best decision for which ones will be effective but also safe for you and your family. But one of the biggest ways that pests could find their way into your home is through your pets. You want to do what you can to protect your animals, but also prevent them from being a vector through which nasty things get inside. There's oral medications that can be prescribed from your vet. Then there's topical treatments. There's some flea collars. Some really aren't that good. Others are better, but I would encourage you to talk to your vet and figure out what would be best for your particular animal, because there's some stuff out there that I think have caused issues with some pets, so you just want to be very careful with what you use. Then if you have a koi pond or other relatively large standing body of water in your yard or on your property, then you can use things called mosquito dunks to prevent mosquito and black fly larvae from growing. Rats are another pest that you need to be concerned about, in addition to having their own nasty diseases that they can spread and make you really sick with. They also carry other things like fleas, which have their own problems as well. So you want to have things on hand that you can use to take care of those issues if they crop up. Traps are good. If you have poison, be very careful how you store that. Animals can get a hold of it and it'll kill them just as easily as it would a rat. And also, heaven forbid, you don't want one of your kids to get a hold of that, because it can be very dangerous for people as well. Another thing that preppers forget to stockpile is electrolyte solutions. If we're in a situation, especially during warmer weather, where you're having to do different kinds of manual labor, maybe you're having to repair your house, you're having to grow your own food, this, that, and the other, you're going to be losing a lot more fluids through sweat. But since it's winter time and we're not really all that worried about, getting overheated right now, at least in the northern hemisphere, you could become sick with some sort of gastrointestinal illness that causes you to lose fluids either through diarrhea or also vomiting. The most dangerous thing that it does to your body is dehydration. You need to replace your fluids and then also the other things that your body loses because of that illness. Pedialyte's a good option, but it doesn't store for very long. The printed best by date on it's about a year after manufacture. I think I read some sources that you may be able to push that out to 2 years. Gatorade, it'll store a lot longer in its powder form. You just store it the same way that you would sugar, just in a Mylar bag, squeeze all the air out, don't add add an oxygen absorber, and it'll store for a really long time. But Gatorade has a very high sugar content, which isn't all that helpful if you're sick, so maybe consider diluting that, or pick up a better electrolyte powder, maybe something that's designed for heavy workouts. Another thing that preppers forget to stockpile is coffee. If you're somebody who doesn't drink coffee, just keep in mind that there are a ton of people that do drink that. If you live with a coffee drinker, having some on hand could help keep everybody sane so they're not cranky because they haven't had their coffee. But also, it is an incredibly valuable barter item. You can get it relatively cheap in the form of instant coffee, which is freeze-dried. So if you put it in Mylar with an oxygen absorber, it's going to store for a very long time. But also, it's very easy to break up into smaller denominations. You can trade as much as you want to at a time. You can trade as little as you want to at a time. You can even use like small bags to make single serving pouches that you could trade maybe for a can of soup or something else. And I know we should have all of those things ahead of time, but coffee is one of those things that's good to have around because you can trade it for other things that you need. Another thing that preppers forget to stock up on are different kinds of repair items. Many disasters, especially those that are weather related, can cause severe damage to your home, and you may need to make repairs yourself if you can't just hire a contractor. Having a decent supply of plywood and lumber could be useful. They can be used to repair damage from a storm, but also to harden entrances and exits. For plywood, the thicker the better for fortifications, but just be aware that fortifications, they can be a double-edged sword because they can draw attention to your home that maybe you don't want. So if you're in a situation where you're thinking, I need to fortify my home, also consider making your house look like it's already been ransacked. Take things like your clothes or your trash, just strew them all over your yard so it looks like you've already been hit. Of course, if you're going to be stockpiling things like lumber and plywood, you need to have fasteners as well, things like nails and screws. If you're going to be dealing with screws, be sure that you have a reliable way to drive them, like have cordless power tools and some sort of solar setup where you can recharge them, because you are not going to be driving 3-inch deck screws all day using just a normal screwdriver. And if you don't have tools that you can use to drive those, then maybe consider getting more nails than you would screws. Spare parts are another important thing to have. Like if you have different kinds of mechanical equipment, you need to make sure that you have pins, springs, and screws for those. But also larger things like gaskets, carburetors, spark plugs for things like generators or other equipment you plan to use, as well as oil and other fluids to keep those pieces of equipment properly maintained. Another thing that you may want to pick up is super glue. It can be used for a lot of different things. You probably want to have sewing supplies like different kinds of sewing needles, thread, safety pins, straight pins. And then even though a lot of people really don't forget this one, tape is another good thing to have. While most people will pick up duct tape, it's also good to have other things like electrical tape. Another thing that people forget to stock up on are different kinds of books. And these, of course, they can be good for entertainment, but they're also very good for learning different kinds of preparedness related skills and for having valuable references that you can use during an emergency. The first kind of book that I recommend people stock up on are just general preparedness books. These cover a wide range of topics like food and water storage, defense, Prepper's Long-Term Survival Guide by Jim Cobb. They just came out with a new version. That's a very, very good one, especially if you're just getting started out, because he explains things really well in a way that's very easy to understand. How to Survive the End of the World as We Know It by James Wesley Rawls is a little bit more advanced. The language that Mr. Rawls uses, I think, is a little bit more, I guess you could say, academic, but it's still a very good resource. It has a lot of good information. Then, of course, there's Creek Stewart's Bug Out Bag book. Then you want to have some outdoor survival and bushcraft books. The SAS Survival Guide, that's one of the best. I think it's like 600 pages. It has a lot of good wilderness survival advice for different climates that you could find yourself in. Also has a part on urban survival in the back, but it also has a lot of, color pictures of things like poisonous animals like snakes, different kinds of poisonous spiders, different kinds of poisonous plants, but also edible plants as well. Then there's Bushcraft 101 by Dave Canterbury, and it's a good resource for kind of outdoor survival information. Then it's also a good idea to have some defense-related books. Prepper's Home Defense is another book written by Jim Cobb. I really like it. Like his other book, it's written in a way that's very easy to understand, but it still has very good information in it. Then Principles of Personal Defense by Colonel Jeff Cooper is a very good book for just kind of getting your mindset right from a defensive standpoint. 100 Deadly Skills is a very fun read. It does have a lot of stuff in it that you're probably never going to use, and you hope you never have to use, but it's very good just because it gets you thinking about different things. The Gift of Fear is another good one. It covers things from a psychological standpoint. It shows the tactics that criminals will use to victimize and harm others, but it also exposes biases that people have that makes it easier for them to be a victim. So knowing the tactics that can be used against you and also the things in our own mind that works against us can really help you overcome those and make you less likely to be victimized by different things. It's also a good idea to have some gardening and homesteading books like Rick Austin's Secret Garden of Survival. It does a good job showing how to set up basically your own food forest that's kind of camouflage. People can't tell necessarily from a distance that it is a garden, so that's nice. And it can also produce a lot of food. Gaia's, I think it's Gaia's Garden is another good one. It also covers permaculture. The Encyclopedia of Country Living by Carla Emery is another. That book is huge. It's not something that you're probably going to read cover to cover, but it's a very good reference. Like, say you have a question about canning, you can just go to the canning section, read all about it, and it'll probably have the information that you need, at least the important stuff. The Foxfire series is another good one. It is the complete anthology, almost, of Appalachian knowledge. So if we were to be dealing with a long-term situation where technology goes back like 100 years, it'd be a very good resource to have. You definitely want to have some medical related books in your collection as well. The Survival Medicine Handbook is always the first one that comes to mind, and like the Encyclopedia of Country Living, it's probably not going to be something that you read cover to cover, but it's good to have in case you're faced with certain injuries or illnesses during a situation where for some reason or another you can't get to a doctor or one isn't available for one reason or another. Then you can at least hopefully help a little bit. Then there's others like where there is no doctor, where there is no dentist. That would be good to have as well. And y'all, this list of books, it's nowhere near complete. There's other kinds of books that people may want to have. Home repair books, also books over electrical, especially off-grid electrical, things dealing with wind energy, solar, all of those different kinds of things. So if there's any kind of book that would be useful that I left out, be sure to put that in the comments to help out some other folks. The sixth thing that a lot of preppers forget to stock up on are different kinds of entertainment. If we're in certain situations, you're not going to be able to just go out on the town and drive around if you're bored. Streaming and YouTube videos will be a thing of the past. So books, like I mentioned a second ago, they're going to be good. If you have a decent sized solar setup, might be a good idea to have some Blu-rays of your favorite movies so that from time to time you can use that setup to maybe watch a movie. It's not something you're going to be doing all the time, but every now and again it could be a nice break. Cards, board games are very good to have around. Then also other things like Legos, especially if you have kids. Another thing that a lot of preppers forget to stock up on are feminine products. And I'm not going to spend too much time here because I'm not an expert, but guys, since a lot of us are kind of the main prepper in our household, like I know around 60 or 70% of my audience are males, this is something that we really tend to overlook. If that's something you're uncomfortable going out and buying, maybe be like, honey, I need you to go spend $100 or however much on your stuff, get it, and then, store it off to the side just for a rainy day. Another thing that preppers forget to stock up on are trash bags. And these really do have a whole lot of uses, of course. They can be used for their normal use of being able to contain and also transport different kinds of waste. But also the larger contractor bags, like the really thick ones, they work well for things like ponchos, pack liners. They can be makeshift shelters, ground cloths, and they can also be small tarps if necessary. If you need something to cover a window, like a broken window, then you can use them for that. Then trash bags can also be used to stop drafts. Maybe you have like a leaky door, a leaky window, and if you don't have tarps, then you can use a larger trash bag to help collect rainwater into things like plastic totes. Baking soda is another thing that preppers forget to stockpile, and it has a whole lot of uses around the house. I know people probably have stuck them in the refrigerator to keep the odors down, but you can also use it for other things as well. Like once you turn it into a paste, then you can use it to brush your teeth. You can also use it on things like bug bites. Baking soda can also be used as a makeshift fire extinguisher if something like a candle tips over. That being said, you really want to have one or more fire extinguishers that you can use to put out fires, as well as things like smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms that can alert you if there's a situation. Then baking soda can also be used to help you clean pots and pans. Then the 10th thing that a lot of preppers forget to stock up on are different kinds of recipes that they can use with their food storage. I think a lot of the time we just store things like beans, rice, canned meat, and then we're just like, we'll figure it out as we go along. But having some recipes ahead of time could really help you make those meals a lot more interesting and a lot more enjoyable. Another good thing about stockpiling recipes is that it can give you an idea of other things that you may want to stockpile, just to kind of diversify things. Like corn masa, it's a good thing to store. It doesn't store as long as some things, probably stores about as long as flour would, but that can allow you to make things like tortillas, which is very important for taco lovers like me and my family. It can also give you an idea of spices that you may want to store. And y'all, there's a whole lot of foods out there that have really long shelf lives, but people don't really think of them when it comes to food storage. So if you want to see those foods that a lot of people forget to stock up on, check out this video. And if y'all want to see some other food storage videos, check this out. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.